Before we dive in, I've got a quick question for you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it? Drop it in the comments. I love seeing how far and wide our viewers are tuning in. Now, imagine this. Rimuru the Cunning suddenly enters the Noragami universe. What happens next? Let's find out. There is no summoning circle, no divine ritual, no dramatic prophecy. One moment, the skies above the boundary between near shore and far shore are quiet, and the next, space folds inward like reality has taken a breath it cannot release. A ripple tears across the spiritual layer of the world of Noragami, subtle enough that humans feel nothing, but violent enough that every god flinches. Something has arrived that does not belong to heaven's registry. Something with no shrine, no followers, no name carved into wood or whispered in prayer. Rimuru Tempest materializes midair, not in his slime form, but in his human body. Silver blue hair catching the dim glow of drifting spirits. Golden eyes scanning a city that exists half inside the living world and half beyond it. He does not panic. He does not hesitate. He observes. The air tastes different here. It carries faith, fear, neglect. Countless human emotions drifting like mist, condensing into phantoms that claw at the edges of perception. Raphael begins analysis instantly, breaking down the mechanics of a reality structured around belief rather than raw magicules. Below him, a swarm of Ayakashi erupts from the shadow of an abandoned building, grotesque shapes stitched from resentment and despair. They descend on a group of unaware civilians crossing a street. In this world, only gods and spirits can see what is coming. Humans simply feel a chill before disaster strikes. Rimuru watches the creatures move and understands the rule immediately. These beings are not demons in the traditional sense. They are symptoms, manifestations of emotional decay. If left alone, they will grow, feed, spread. He does not test the waters. He does not search for allies. He acts. A pulse of controlled magicules radiates outward, precise and contained, forming a barrier that separates the civilians from the swarm in a fraction of a second. The Ayakashi collide with it and shriek, their forms distorting under pressure they cannot comprehend. Predator activates. The nearest phantom is pulled inward, its corrupted essence dissected in a space beyond physical law. Raphael catalogs everything. Composition tied to human fear, sustained by lingering belief. Bound to a system that categorizes gods as administrators of balance. Interesting. Rimuru lifts a hand and compresses the swarm into a singularity of purified energy, not destroying it recklessly, but unraveling it at the conceptual level. The spiritual pollution dissipates like steam under sunlight. The civilians continued walking, unaware they were seconds from being erased. Across the city, multiple minor gods pause mid-conversation. Their connection to nearby shrine flickers. Faith that once flowed steadily toward them wavers for a heartbeat, because something impossible just happened. A calamity-level phantom outbreak was resolved instantly. No shrine was credited. No prayer was offered. Yet the threat vanished. In a small, nearly forgotten shrine tucked between apartment complexes, a certain stray god stiffens as he feels the disturbance ripple through the far shore. Yato looks up from a 5 yen offering box that contains exactly 1 coin and narrows his eyes. This was not heaven. This was not Bishamon. This was something else entirely. Back above the city, Rimuru closes his eyes briefly as Raphael projects a model of the world's metaphysical structure. Gods here exist because they are remembered, because humans believe. Their power scales with recognition. Without worship, they fade. Without a name, they vanish. Rimuru smiles faintly. So divinity here is externalized dependency. He turns his gaze toward a distant shrine where prayers are being offered mechanically, without true conviction. He can feel the thin stream of faith feeding the god tied to it. Fragile, conditional. If humans forget, the god dies. That is the law of this universe. But Rimuru does not operate under their law. He steps forward and deliberately allows his aura to leak, not enough to crush the city, but enough to be felt by every spiritual entity within range. It is not holy, it is not malevolent, it is sovereign, an existence that does not require acknowledgement to remain. Across the far shore, whispers spread instantly. A new god has manifested, but no one recalls praying to him. No one remembers carving his name. And that contradiction is exactly what makes the heavens uneasy. Because for the first time in this world's history, something has appeared that does not need belief to exist. And as Rimuru continues to walk through a reality built on faith, the balance that has governed gods for centuries begins to tilt in a way no one yet understands, especially not the minor deities whose fading shrines are about to face a threat far greater than any Ayakashi swarm they have ever battled. And Rimuru has not even begun to test the limits of what this universe will allow him to become. The shift begins quietly, not with thunder, not with divine trumpets, but with hesitation. A mother walking her child home suddenly feels a strange sense of relief she cannot explain. A salaryman who has not visited a shrine in years pauses at a crosswalk and glances upward, sensing that something oppressive has lifted from the air. They do not know Rimuru's name. They do not see his form, but human emotion is the foundation of this world, and right now, relief is spreading faster than fear. Raphael processes the phenomenon in real time. Emotional resonance is redirecting, not toward a specific shrine, not toward an established god, but toward the source of safety itself, toward the unknown presence that eliminated danger without demand for offering. Rimuru feels it as a faint warmth brushing against his consciousness, not worship, not yet, recognition, the earliest seed of myth. Interesting. So belief does not require identity at first. It requires impact. He lands lightly on the rooftop of the abandoned building where the Ayakashi first formed. The structure is soaked in lingering resentment, a breeding ground for future phantoms. Instead of cleansing it outright, he places a single invisible barrier across its foundation, altering the spiritual flow. Negative emotion disperses before it can coagulate. He is not just eliminating threats, he is restructuring the ecosystem. In the far shore, several minor gods feel their domains weaken further. A river spirit whose power depends on anxious prayers from students facing exams notices offerings slow. A household deity tied to warding off minor misfortune senses a dip in devotion. Their followers still exist, but fear has momentarily lessened. And in this universe, fear fuels faith just as much as gratitude. High above, within heaven's domain, observation spirits begin recording the anomaly. No shrine affiliation, no divine lineage, no registration number. Yet the being radiates authority comparable to an upper-tier god. The report travels upward. Rimuru tilts his head slightly as Raphael overlays a map of spiritual nodes across the city. Shrines glow faintly where belief is strongest. He studies the pattern and immediately notices the inefficiency. Gods here compete for fragments of human attention. They rely on scarcity. The system thrives on insecurity. Humans fear losing protection, so they distribute prayers cautiously. That structure is flawed. Rimuru's existence alone challenges it, because he does not diminish when ignored. He does not weaken when forgotten. His core is self-sustaining. A sudden distortion cuts across the far shore. A massive Ayakashi, far larger than the earlier swarm, crawls out from beneath an overpass where countless grudges have pooled over decades. This one is different, dense, intelligent, drawn by the surge of unfamiliar power. It senses a rival apex entity. Below, traffic continues unaware. Rimuru does not rush. He studies the creature as it phases partially into the near shore, its grotesque limbs scraping across reality. If left alone, this thing would require a coordinated effort from multiple gods, a spectacle, a public exorcism reinforcing divine necessity. Instead, Rimuru extends his hand and releases a controlled wave of magicules tuned specifically to the creature's composition. Not brute force, Precision rewriting. The Ayakashi freezes mid-lunge as its structure destabilizes. Predator activates again, but this time Rimuru absorbs not just the entity, but the emotional residue that birthed it. Rage, regret, abandonment. He pauses. Then he does something no god in this world has ever attempted. He converts that emotional mass into neutral spiritual energy and releases it harmlessly into the atmosphere. No backlash, no curse, no lingering corruption. The cycle ends completely. Across the city, the subtle pressure weighing on countless hearts lightens again. And this time, the warmth flowing toward Rimuru is stronger, still nameless, still unconscious, but measurable. On a distant rooftop, Yato watches the event unfold with narrowed eyes. He recognizes the scale instantly. That was not standard purification. That was the annihilation of the root cause. If this continues, phantoms will decline. And if phantoms decline, the demand for gods declines with them. Rimuru turns his gaze toward the horizon, fully aware he is being observed. He does not mask his presence. He amplifies it slightly, allowing his aura to ripple across both shores. The message is unspoken, but clear. I am here. In a forgotten shrine where offerings were already rare, a faint crack forms along the wooden frame. The god tied to it feels a tremor of existential dread, because somewhere in the city humans are beginning to feel safer without knowing why. And safety without visible divinity is the most dangerous precedent this universe has ever faced. Rimuru closes his eyes briefly as Raphael delivers its conclusion. Continued intervention will accelerate faith redistribution, probability of systemic destabilization rising steadily. He opens his eyes again, calm and decisive. Good. Because he did not enter this world to play by rules designed for fragile gods. And the more he acts, the clearer it becomes that the true threat to heaven is not his power, but the possibility that humans may soon realize they were never as dependent as they were taught to be. And that realization is already spreading beneath the surface of a city that has no idea its divine hierarchy is beginning to fracture. The fracture does not announce itself with noise, it manifests as silence. Shrines that once hummed with anxious whispers feel strangely still. The constant undercurrent of desperation that sustained countless minor gods begins thinning out like fog under rising sunlight. They cannot pinpoint the cause, only the effect. Their blessings are still requested, but the urgency behind those prayers has softened. Protection no longer feels scarce. Rimuru walks through the city at street level now, blending seamlessly among humans who perceive him as nothing more than a striking young man with unusual eyes. He watches them carefully. The system here revolves around invisible contracts. Humans fear misfortune, so they outsource security to gods. Gods eliminate threats, reinforcing the need for continued devotion. A closed loop, stable, predictable. Until now. A young student pauses near a vending machine, glancing uneasily at a dark alley where shadows coil unnaturally. Normally, that discomfort would ferment into a minor ayakashi within hours. Instead, the shadow flickers and dissolves before it can mature. Rimuru does not even look in its direction. The passive field of refined magicules around him is enough to disrupt low-tier spiritual formation. Raphael confirms it. His mere presence is recalibrating ambient negativity. That is when the first direct response comes. A thin, razor-sharp line of divine energy slices toward him from above, invisible to human eyes, but precise enough to sever spiritual constructs. Rimuru raises 2 fingers and catches it effortlessly. The energy hums between his fingertips, resisting analysis for a fraction of a second before Raphael dissects its structure. Regalia-based weapon, bound to a god. So someone has decided to test him. Rimuru releases the captured strike upward in a harmless arc, deliberately redirecting it into open sky. He does not retaliate, not yet. Escalation must be controlled. On a rooftop across the street stands Yato, blue tracksuit fluttering slightly in the wind, eyes locked on Rimuru with a mixture of irritation and calculation. He felt the weakening of nearby shrines. He saw the second Ayakashi erased at its core. No chant, no ritual, no offering bowl. This is bad for business. Yato leaps down, landing in the far shore layer overlapping the sidewalk. To human eyes, nothing happens. To spirits, the air tightens instantly. Rimuru turns slowly to face him. Their gazes meet. One is a self-proclaimed delivery god clinging to survival through 5 yen prayers. The other is a self-sustaining demon lord whose existence does not fluctuate with attention. You are interfering with divine jurisdiction, Yato states, blade materializing in his grip. His tone is light, but tension coils beneath it. Phantoms are our responsibility. Rimuru studies him calmly. Your responsibility seems inefficient. The words are not cruel, they are observational. And that stings more. Yato moves first, vanishing in a blur of divine speed. The regalia arcs toward Rimuru's neck with enough force to split a high-tier Ayakashi cleanly in half. Rimuru does not dodge. He raises his hand and catches the blade between his palm and fingers. The impact sends a shockwave rippling across the far shore, cracking pavement that humans cannot see. Raphael floods him with data. The weapon is not merely forged steel. It is a transformed human soul, bound by name. Its strength scales with the god's status. Fascinating. Rimuru tightens his grip slightly, not enough to damage it, but enough to demonstrate control. Yato's eyes widen for a fraction of a second. No god catches a regalia barehanded. You depend on borrowed souls, Rimuru says quietly. Without them, your power drops significantly. Yato jerks the blade back and retreats a step, reassessing. That is how gods function here. Partnership, trust, naming. It is sacred. Rimuru nods once. I see. And then he does something that freezes the tension entirely. He extends his free hand and shapes condensed magicules into a blade nearly identical in structure to a regalia. Except it carries no human presence inside it. Pure energy, stable, autonomous. Raphael has already mapped the transformation process from observation alone. The imitation weapon hums with quiet authority. Yato feels it immediately. That thing has no soul bound to it, no risk of blight, no emotional volatility. It is a divine weapon without divine dependency. If such a construct becomes common, the entire Shinki system loses necessity. Gods would no longer require human spirits to function. The cycle of naming, corruption, punishment, and forgiveness would collapse. Rimuru lowers the blade before any clash can resume. I am not here to erase you, he says evenly. But your world is structurally unstable. I intend to correct that. The statement is not a threat. It is a declaration of intent. Across the far shore, several observing spirits recoil. Heaven's sensors flare. Unauthorized replication of divine mechanics has been detected. And for the first time since his arrival, Rimuru feels something new descending from above. Not a single god, not a minor shrine spirit, but a tension from the highest layer of this universe's hierarchy. He smiles faintly. Good, let them look. Because the more they watch, the more they will realize that what stands before them is not a rival god seeking worship, not a calamity craving destruction, but a sovereign existence proving through action that divinity here has always been limited by its own design, and that limitation is about to be exposed in a way none of them can quietly undo. The air changes. Not because of Yato's presence, not because of the cracked spiritual pavement beneath them, but because something far older has begun paying attention. High above the layered skies of the far shore, currents of authority shift, the kind that do not move unless balance is threatened. Reports ripple through heaven's network like a silent alarm. An unidentified entity has replicated divine armament structure. An unidentified entity has disrupted multiple phantom incubations. An unidentified entity is generating emotional stabilization without shrine affiliation. In other words, an anomaly. Yato feels it too, that pressure, subtle but unmistakable, the kind that precedes divine intervention. He clicks his tongue. You really don't know what you're messing with, do you? Heaven doesn't like unscheduled gods. Rimuru's expression does not change. I am not scheduled. The statement lands heavier than intended, because that is precisely the problem. In this world, gods are cataloged, ranked, approved. Their myths are recorded. Their domains are defined. Even rebellion has paperwork. Rimuru stands outside all of it. A ripple tears across the far shore sky, invisible to humans but blinding to spirits. A column of descending light forms several blocks away, not striking the city directly, but manifesting as a projection of authority, a warning. Minor gods within range immediately retreat, withdrawing their presence to avoid implication. Shrines dim preemptively, as if bowing in apology. Yato steps back, blade lowering slightly. That's your cue to leave, he mutters. Rimuru does not move. Instead, he expands his perception upward, allowing Raphael to interface with the descending energy. Analysis floods in, structured divinity, rule enforcement protocols. The light is not a god itself. It is an extension of heaven's administrative will. So this universe truly runs like a managed system. The column intensifies, scanning for the foreign presence. It expects fear, submission, at minimum, concealment. Rimuru does none of those. He releases his aura fully for the first time since arriving. Not explosively, not destructively, but undeniably. Sovereign magicules surge outward in controlled waves, parting the descending light without shattering it. The two forces meet in midair, pressing against each other like opposing tides. Across the city, every spirit freezes. Even distant gods feel the collision. This is no longer about phantoms. This is no longer about shrine competition. This is a confrontation between systemic authority and independent existence. The scanning light attempts to categorize him. Divine class, unknown. Shrine location, none. Faith anchor, undefined. Dependency chain, absent. Error. For the first time since heaven formalized its hierarchy, something cannot be placed. Rimuru tilts his head slightly as Raphael confirms the outcome. They cannot measure what does not rely on their parameters. Interesting? He takes a single step forward. The movement alone pushes the descending light back several meters, not through aggression, through density of presence. His existence weighs more than the rule being applied to him. Yato watches in stunned silence. This is not how encounters with heaven go. There are decrees, trials, punishments, not resistance. The light flickers, recalculates, and then withdraws upward, not in defeat but in reassessment. The sky clears, but nothing is the same. Because heaven just encountered an entity it could not register, and worse, could not suppress instantly. Rimuru exhales softly, aura settling back into a contained state. The city resumes its unaware rhythm. Cars move. Pedestrians scroll through their phones. Somewhere a small child laughs without knowing that divine law just failed to execute properly above their head. Yato stares at him. You're going to start a war. Rimuru looks toward the horizon where faint shrine lights continue flickering. Number 1. I am ending a dependency. He turns and begins walking again, leaving Yato standing on fractured spiritual ground. Behind them, in multiple forgotten shrines, hairline cracks spread further along aging wood, not because worship has vanished completely, but because certainty has. Humans may not know Rimuru's name yet, but their fear is decreasing. Their quiet sense of safety is growing. And in this universe, that subtle emotional shift is more catastrophic than any open battle. High above, within heaven's domain, deliberation begins. This is no stray god, no rogue spirit. This is a self-sustaining anomaly capable of rewriting the relationship between humans and divinity itself. And Rimuru has only begun acting. As he steps into the deeper currents of the city, Raphael continues projecting probability branches. Increased intervention will accelerate systemic destabilization. Conflict with upper-tier war gods likely. Direct summons from heaven imminent. Rimuru smiles faintly at the forecast. Good. Because the world of gods built on fragile belief has just encountered something that does not fade when forgotten. And as the first segment of this new reality unfolds, the question is no longer whether Rimuru can survive inside the Noragami universe, but whether the Noragami universe can survive the presence of a being who does not need it to exist. He should have walked away. That would have been the smart decision. Let heaven handle it. Let the higher gods investigate the anomaly. Yato has survived for centuries by staying just relevant enough to avoid erasure and just insignificant enough to avoid execution. Balance has always been his specialty. But balance is slipping. And slipping balance means slipping faith. Yato stands alone on the rooftop long after Rimuru disappears into the city below. The 5-yen coin in his pocket feels heavier than usual. He tells himself this is about jurisdiction, about protecting his territory, about preventing an unknown entity from destabilizing the fragile ecosystem that allows even a stray god like him to exist. It is not. It is about fear. Because what he witnessed was not overwhelming violence. It was efficient. Rimuru eliminated threats without spectacle, without demanding recognition, without carving his name into the act. That is dangerous. In this world, visibility sustains divinity. Miracles must be attributed. Danger must feel persistent, otherwise humans stop praying. And if they stop praying, gods fade. Yato clenches his jaw and leaps from the rooftop, cutting through the far shore in a blur of motion. He tracks Rimuru's presence easily. It is not hidden. It hums across the spiritual layer like a steady, immovable pulse. No fluctuation, no hunger, just constant sovereignty. Below, Rimuru pauses at a quiet park where children are playing under the late afternoon sky. He watches them for a moment, studying the way laughter disperses low-level negativity before it can settle. Raphael continues feeding him data about this universe's emotional economy. Joy thins phantoms. Fear thickens them. Gods intervene selectively to maintain equilibrium. A shadow stretches unnaturally across the grass. Yato lands behind him, regalia already in hand. This time there is no testing strike, no warning beam from a distance. He closes the space instantly and swings with lethal precision aimed directly at Rimuru's core. The blade connects and stops. Not because Rimuru blocked it, because the edge cannot penetrate the thin, invisible layer of magicules coating his body. Yato pushes harder, divine energy flaring, the ground beneath them cracking along spiritual fault lines. The children nearby feel nothing more than a sudden gust of wind. Rimuru turns his head slowly, eyes calm. You are escalating unnecessarily. You are destabilizing everything, Yato snaps back. You think wiping out phantoms fixes this world. It doesn't. It breaks the cycle. Rimuru's gaze sharpens slightly. Exactly. That single word lands harder than any counterattack. Yato disengages and flips backward, reassessing midair before landing lightly on a far shore tree branch. You don't understand how this works. Gods need believers. Shinki need purpose. Humans need something to rely on when things go wrong. Rimuru faces him fully now. And what happens when they rely on something that cannot protect them consistently? Yato hesitates. That is not a question gods like to answer. Rimuru steps forward, aura tightening but not expanding destructively. Your power fluctuates with public perception. Your weapon is a bound soul that risks corruption through emotional instability. Your survival depends on maintaining just enough fear to justify prayer. That is not divinity. That is dependency management. Yato's grip tightens around his regalia. You talk like you're above it. I am not above it, Rimuru replies evenly. I am independent of it. The difference is everything. Yato lunges again, this time channeling more divine force through the blade, compressing his faith into a single decisive strike. The attack tears through spiritual space, distorting the far shore around them. Rimuru does not counter with brute force. Instead, He raises his hand and activates a refined barrier that absorbs the kinetic and divine components separately. Raphael isolates the energy signature and maps its conversion formula in real time. Data acquired. In one fluid motion, Rimuru reshapes the captured divine energy into a weapon identical in structure to Yato's regalia, and hurls it back, not at Yato's body, but past his shoulder, embedding it into a distant spirit wall with a thunderous crack. The message is clear. I can replicate you. Yato's eyes widened. That was not mimicry. That was comprehension. He feels it instinctively. If this is studied long enough, he will not just imitate gods. He will optimize them out of relevance. Rimuru lowers his hand again. I offered cooperation. You chose confrontation. Yato's mistake was not attacking. Gods fight. That is normal. His mistake was revealing how the system functions in front of an entity designed to analyze and improve systems. Across the far shore, unseen observers record everything. Heaven does not intervene yet. They are watching how the stray god handles the anomaly, measuring outcomes. Rimuru tilts his head slightly. There is another option. Yato narrows his eyes, and that is, let me show you what divinity looks like without fragility. The wind stills. The park grows unnaturally quiet as spiritual pressure begins condensing between them, not chaotic, not explosive, but deliberate. And Yato realizes too late that by forcing this confrontation early, he may have accelerated a demonstration that heaven desperately hoped to delay. Yato drops from the branch and lands directly in front of Rimuru, blade lowered but not dismissed. The distance between them is no longer that of enemies about to clash. It is the distance of two ideologies about to collide. You think you can fix this world by overpowering it, Yato says, voice quieter now but edged with tension. That is not how it works here. Rimuru studies him carefully. I am not overpowering it. I am identifying inefficiencies. That answer irritates Yato more than arrogance would have. Gods in this world understand pride. They understand conquest. What they do not understand is being reduced to flawed architecture. Before either can speak again, a tremor pulses through the far shore. Not from heaven this time, from below, from the cracks left behind by collapsing phantom concentrations. When negative energy disperses too quickly without gradual rebalancing, it leaves vacuums, and vacuums invite something worse. The ground behind the park ruptures as a colossal Ayakashi claws its way upward, larger than the previous one, stitched together from decades of accumulated urban despair. Its body is layered with masks, each representing suppressed emotion never resolved, only buried. It does not descend from fear alone. It emerges from systemic neglect. Yato looks back and curses under his breath. That thing should have taken weeks to form. Raphael answers instantly inside Rimuru's mind, accelerated manifestation triggered by rapid environmental recalibration. The system is compensating. In other words, the universe is pushing back. The Ayakashi roars, its sound reverberating across both shores. Windows rattle in the near shore. Dogs bark without understanding why. Spirits scatter. Yato moves on instinct. He launches toward the creature, blade flashing as he carves through one of the outer mask layers. The strike is clean, divine, practiced, but the mask regenerates almost instantly, fed by the emotional backlog that has not yet fully dissipated. Rimuru does not rush in. He observes the regeneration pattern, the way the entity anchors itself to unresolved human sentiments across multiple city blocks. This is not a simple phantom. It is a manifestation of structural imbalance. Yato shouts without looking back. If you destabilize the flow too fast, things like this happen. This is why we manage it gradually. Gradual management maintains dependency, Rimuru replies calmly. It does not eliminate the cause. The Ayakashi slams a massive limb downward. Yato barely dodges, skidding across fractured spiritual pavement. For a fleeting moment, strain flashes across his face. He is strong, but his strength scales with active faith. And right now, the city's emotional current is shifting unpredictably. Rimuru steps forward. Enough testing. He raises his hand and releases a focused surge of magicules directly into the creature's core. Not at its surface, not at its limbs, at the nexus binding the masks together. Raphael overlays the emotional network in glowing strands only he can see. Each strand corresponds to a pocket of unresolved despair somewhere in the city. Instead of cutting them violently, Rimuru sends stabilizing energy backward through the connections, neutralizing volatility at the source node simultaneously. The effect is immediate. The masks begin cracking, not from impact, but from structural collapse. The Ayakashi convulses, its regeneration faltering as the emotional anchors weaken. Yato stares. That is not purification. That is systemic override. Within seconds, the colossal phantom disintegrates into harmless particles of light, dispersing like embers in wind. No residue, no curse, no delayed backlash. Silence returns to the park. Yato lowers his blade slowly, breathing steady but mind racing. He felt it clearly. Rimuru did not just destroy the phantom. He reduced the underlying emotional volatility that would have birthed more. That is dangerous. Because if despair is resolved at scale, then phantoms decline permanently. And if phantoms decline permanently, then the visible necessity of gods declines with them. Rimuru turns toward Yato again. The system overcompensates when disrupted too quickly. That can be adjusted. You talk like this world is a broken machine, Yato says. It is a self-preserving loop, Rimuru corrects. One that prioritizes continuation over optimization. Yato feels something uncomfortable settle in his chest. Not anger, not fear, recognition. He has seen gods cling to broken shrines rather than evolve. He has seen heaven enforce outdated hierarchies simply because they maintain order. But he also knows the cost of defiance. Above them, faint threads of observation tighten. Higher-tier gods are no longer just watching. They are calculating response scenarios. Rimuru senses it as well. Time is narrowing. You should leave, Yato says finally, voice low, not as a threat, as advice. Heaven will not debate philosophy. Rimuru's golden eyes meet his. I did not come here to debate. The wind shifts again, heavier this time, charged with approaching authority. And Yato realizes that by challenging Rimuru prematurely, he has forced a direct demonstration of power in front of unseen judges who now have undeniable proof that the anomaly is not theoretical, not unstable, but terrifyingly controlled, and whatever decision heaven makes next will not be measured or subtle. The pressure descends in layers, not explosive, not theatrical, but suffocating in its precision. Yato recognizes it instantly. This is not a warning projection like before. This is a presence, a sanctioned observer from heaven stepping closer to the boundary between oversight and intervention. The sky above the park darkens slightly within the far shore spectrum, threads of golden authority weaving together into a defined silhouette high overhead. Not fully manifesting, not yet, but close enough that every spirit in the district feels compelled to lower their gaze. Rimuru does not. Raphael maps the descending pattern in real time, hierarchical divinity, structured command authority, significantly higher output than stray-class gods, probability of forced compliance attempt increasing. Yato steps beside Rimuru without realizing he has done so. Not aligned, not allied, just instinctively bracing for what comes next. You've made your point, he mutters. Don't push it further. Rimuru glances at him briefly. I have not begun pushing. The golden silhouette solidifies slightly, voice reverberating without sound, transmitting directly through the spiritual layer. Unregistered entity. Cease interference with divine balance. Submit to evaluation. The command is not hostile, it is procedural. Rimuru considers it for half a second. Evaluation implies categorization. Categorization implies limitation. He steps forward instead. Define balance. The air tightens. Gods do not question heaven's definitions. They operate within them. Yato stiffens. That was reckless. The silhouette responds, its glow intensifying. Balance is sustained distribution of faith and regulated purification of corruption. Disruption threatens systemic stability. Rimuru's expression remains composed. Stability for whom? A subtle tremor passes through the observing presence. The question is not defiant, it is analytical. Rimuru continues before the entity can redirect the exchange. Your system requires persistent fear to justify divine relevance. You mitigate symptoms rather than eliminate sources. You preserve dependency to maintain hierarchy. Yato closes his eyes briefly. He knows this conversation is dangerous territory. The golden authority sharpens. You operate outside the approved structure. Such existence is destabilizing by definition. Correct, Rimuru replies calmly. The admission lands harder than denial would have. Energy gathers above, not yet an attack, but a preparation. A demonstration of scale, the kind that reminds lesser gods of their place. Raphael completes a full breakdown. The authority channeling downward is not singular power. It is a collective endorsement, a fragment of heaven's administrative core. To oppose it directly would escalate beyond this district. Rimuru does not oppose it directly. He expands his perception instead, reaching outward across the city. He senses subtle shifts in human emotion after the recent phantom collapses. Reduced anxiety in certain neighborhoods, increased clarity in others, the beginnings of long-term stabilization. He focuses on that. Then he releases a controlled wave of harmonized magicules across multiple city blocks, not as force, but as calibration. The energy threads through lingering emotional pockets, smoothing volatility without erasing individuality. Below, humans feel something small but noticeable. A breath that seems easier. A thought that feels lighter. The golden authority falters, not weakened, conflicted. Because what it is witnessing is not destruction of balance. It is an improvement of baseline conditions. Yato stares at Rimuru in disbelief. You're adjusting the entire district at once. It is inefficient to work incident by incident, Rimuru replies. The presence above tightens again, unauthorized mass influence detected. And yet there is no backlash, no spike in phantom generation, no collapse of shrine structures at that moment. Instead, the spiritual atmosphere grows clearer, cleaner. For the first time, Heaven's observer encounters data that does not align with projected catastrophe models. Rimuru looks up directly at the silhouette. If balance requires fragility, it is flawed. Silence follows, not absence of sound. Absence of immediate rebuttal. Yato feels it in his bones. This is a mistake, not the attack earlier. Not the replication of a regalia. This, forcing heaven to confront the possibility that their design is outdated. The golden form begins retracting slowly, its light thinning rather than intensifying. Not retreat, recalculation. This matter will be escalated, the presence transmits finally. I expected nothing less, Rimuru answers. The sky clears once more, but the atmosphere remains heavy with consequence. Yato exhales slowly, tension bleeding from his shoulders. You just challenged the entire hierarchy. Rimuru turns away from the sky and back toward the city. Number 1 demonstrated an alternative. There is a difference, and Yato understands it too well. A challenge invites suppression. An alternative invites fear. Across heaven, discussions ignite. Upper-tier war gods begin reviewing the anomaly's output. Faith fluctuation charts are analyzed. Shrine stability metrics are compared against predicted collapse scenarios that never occurred. Rimuru walks calmly toward the edge of the park, aura fully contained again. Yato follows at a distance, mind racing. He attacked first to assert control. Instead, he accelerated scrutiny at the highest level. He forced a public demonstration of Rimuru's capability in front of heaven itself. That was the mistake. Because now, this is no longer a local disruption. It is a case study. And heaven does not tolerate variables that outperform the system. Yato watches Rimuru step off the park path and back into the rhythm of the city as if nothing monumental just occurred. That composure unsettles him more than raw power ever could. God's posture. They boast. They defend their domains loudly to reinforce relevance. Rimuru does none of that. He corrects, observes, moves on. You really think they're going to let this slide? Yato says, catching up. His tone is no longer confrontational. It is searching. Rimuru answers without slowing. They will not. Then why provoke them? Because hiding would confirm their assumption that I am a threat to be contained. Demonstrating control forces them to reconsider the framework. Yato almost laughs at that. You don't know heaven very well. Rimuru's gaze shifts slightly toward the skyline where distant shrines flicker like nervous stars. I know systems that resist evolution. They prioritize preservation of authority over improvement of outcome. That lands too close to truths Yato has quietly carried for centuries. He has seen minor gods erased for declining faith while larger gods with political backing remain untouched despite equal stagnation. He has seen Shinki punished harshly for emotional instability while the structural pressure causing that instability remains unaddressed. Above the far shore, faint lines of divine transit begin forming. Not a single overwhelming presence this time. Multiple signatures, war-aligned, disciplined, structured. Yato feels it before he sees it. That is not administration. That is preparation. You just escalated this to enforcement level, he says quietly. Rimuru stops at a crosswalk as the human signal turns red. Cars pass through the intersection unaware that divine mobilization is occurring layers above their heads. He watches the traffic with mild curiosity. Humans obey signals because they believe in shared order. Gods enforce order because they believe in shared hierarchy. Both systems function on trust. The difference is adaptability. When the pedestrian light changes, Rimuru steps forward. Yato follows instinctively. Several blocks away, a minor shrine deity flickers violently. Not from loss of faith this time, from fear of association. Heaven's scrutiny creates pressure. Gods connected indirectly to anomalous zones risk investigation. Some withdraw their influence entirely to avoid entanglement. That withdrawal creates micro-vacuums. Rimuru senses it immediately. The spiritual atmosphere begins destabilizing not because of his interference, but because of divine retreat. When authority pulls back too quickly, unmanaged emotion accumulates unevenly. Yato notices it a heartbeat later. You see what happens. When they reposition, the balance shifts. Yes, Rimuru replies, because the structure is centralized. A low rumble spreads beneath the district, not another massive Ayakashi. Smaller distortions scattered across multiple neighborhoods. Symptoms of abrupt divine hesitation. Rimuru closes his eyes briefly and expands his awareness again. This time more carefully. Instead of overwhelming calibration, he threads fine strands of magicules along fault lines created by heaven's tactical withdrawal. He does not erase emotional weight. He redistributes it evenly, preventing concentrated eruptions. Yato watches the process with dawning realization. You're compensating for their reaction. It is inefficient to allow collateral instability, Rimuru answers. For the first time since this confrontation began, Yato feels something unfamiliar when looking at him. Not rivalry, not suspicion, possibility. If what you're doing actually works long-term, Yato says slowly, it changes everything. Shrines wouldn't need to compete as aggressively. Shinki wouldn't be exposed to constant corruption cycles. Minor gods wouldn't fade just because fear dips for a season. Rimuru opens his eyes. That is the point. And there it is, the core difference. He is not trying to dominate the hierarchy. He is attempting to remove the conditions that make hierarchy necessary. Above them, 3 distinct divine signatures solidify at the edge of manifestation range. Not observers, not administrators, enforcers. Their power signatures are heavier, sharper, aligned with combat authority. Word has spread quickly. An unregistered entity has not only resisted classification but compensated for heaven's repositioning without generating instability. That makes him unpredictable. Yato exhales slowly. They're coming in person now, not projections. Rimuru looks upward, golden eyes steady. Good. You really don't fear them at all, do you? Fear is an adaptive response to uncertainty, Rimuru replies. I have already modeled their likely approaches. Yato shakes his head. That is not how gods talk. Rimuru's faint smile returns. I am not a god by your definition. And that statement crystallizes the mistake Yato made. By forcing confrontation early, he exposed Rimuru's methodology to heaven before the system could adapt quietly. He turned a gradual anomaly into a visible challenge. Now, the war gods are mobilizing. The spiritual atmosphere tightens as the first of them begins descending. Armor glinting within the far shore spectrum, weapons humming with sanctified authority. Yato grips his regalia again, caught between instinct and uncertainty. If he sides with heaven, he defends the structure that barely sustains him. If he sides against Rimuru, he opposes the only entity who has demonstrated a way to stabilize this world without fear as fuel. Rimuru steps forward toward the descending presences, posture relaxed, aura contained but immeasurably dense. The mistake has already been made. Heaven now sees him not as rumor, not as report, but as a functioning alternative to their design. And alternatives, especially successful ones, are far more dangerous than outright enemies. The sky does not split. It hardens. Divine pressure condenses above the district like a drawn blade held inches from the world's throat. The three war-aligned presences that began descending now halt mid-manifestation, not retreating, but making space, because something stronger has answered the escalation. Across the far shore, countless Shinki snap to attention as a familiar authority floods the spiritual current. Disciplined, resolute, absolute. Bishamon has entered the field. She does not descend recklessly. She arrives with formation, golden hair catching the ambient glow of the far shore, violet eyes sharp with controlled fury, armor layered in divine precision. Behind her, multiple regalia signatures align in synchronized readiness, each bound soul resonating with unwavering loyalty. This is not administrative oversight. This is mobilized war doctrine. Yato exhales under his breath. Of course it's her. Bishamon surveys the district in a single sweeping glance, taking in the stabilized emotional currents, the absence of active phantoms, the subtle redistribution of spiritual pressure. Her expression does not soften at the improvement. It tightens. You are the anomaly, she states, voice calm but edged with command. Rimuru meets her gaze without lowering his own, if that is the term your system prefers. The air between them grows dense as layered divine energy begins locking the perimeter. Her Shinki spread outward across adjacent rooftops, forming a containment grid. They are not attacking blindly. They are preventing escape vectors, strategic, efficient. Yato steps back instinctively. This is no longer a stray confrontation. This is a formal engagement. Bishamon lifts one hand slightly and several regalia shift forms at once. Blades, spears, projectile constructs all materializing in flawless coordination. You have interfered with divine balance, replicated sacred weaponry, and resisted heaven's classification. Stand down and submit to judgment. Rimuru tilts his head faintly. On what charge? Destabilization of the faith distribution network. The phrasing confirms everything Raphael has already concluded. Gods here operate within a managed ecosystem. Faith is currency. Stability is regulated scarcity. Rimuru's voice remains even. The district is measurably more stable than it was hours ago. The phantom generation has declined. Emotional volatility has decreased. Civilian safety has increased. Bishamon's eyes narrow. That is not your determination to make. Behind her, one of her Shinki shifts forward, unable to contain their hostility. You dare lecture a war god about balance. Rimuru does not react to the insult. He studies Bishamon instead. She is not blind to results. She is bound to precedent. You protect this world by fighting symptoms, he says calmly. I am addressing the cause. That sentence is the spark. Bishamon's aura flares, controlled but immense. The far shore trembles under the weight of her authority. Cause and effect are not yours to redefine. Structure prevents collapse. Your interference risks uncontrolled chain reactions across multiple domains. Raphael processes the projection instantly. She is not exaggerating. If faith flow is altered too rapidly without synchronized adaptation across all shrines, secondary destabilizations will occur. Heaven fears cascade failure. Rimuru nods once, then adjusts the structure. The simplicity of that answer ignites her temper. You presume the right to redesign what has sustained gods and humans for centuries, she says, stepping forward. Each footfall sends ripples across the spiritual layer. You appear without lineage, without contract, without accountability, and declare our foundation inefficient. Rimuru's golden eyes remain steady. I declare it improvable. The containment grid tightens. Rooftops crack under concentrated divine output. Human bystanders feel only an inexplicable heaviness in their chests as pressure builds invisibly above them. Yato watches the exchange with growing tension. Bishamon does not mobilize unless she intends to end the threat decisively. She has lost Shinki before. She understands systemic fragility intimately. To her, Rimuru is not just an outsider. He is a variable that could trigger losses she cannot afford. Bishamon raises her hand fully now. Multiple regalia shift simultaneously into long-range assault configuration. Energy gathers at their tips in disciplined synchronization. Final directive, she declares. Submit or be neutralized. Rimuru exhales softly, aura expanding just enough to meet the rising tide without overwhelming it. Sovereign magicules ripple outward in a controlled sphere, intersecting with her divine grid. Neutralization implies hostility, he says quietly. I have shown none. You have shown defiance. Her hand drops. The first volley launches. Dozens of divine projectiles streak across the far shore in perfect formation, each calibrated to pierce high-tier spiritual defenses. They do not scatter wildly. They converge from multiple angles, forcing containment rather than evasion. Rimuru does not dodge. He steps forward into the storm. The projectiles converge around him, each humming with sacred resonance, but they do not touch his core. Rimuru's aura folds inward, subtly altering the spatial layer surrounding his body. Each divine strike is intercepted, not with brute force, but with precise spatial manipulation that neutralizes impact while leaving the energy intact. Raphael maps each collision instantaneously, calculating the pattern, the energy density, the divine signature, and its dependency on Bishamon's faith network. Bishamon narrows her eyes, surprised at the minimal disturbance. Even with all her Shinki firing in perfect synchronization, the expected devastation is absent. She increases output, layering additional regalia constructs, creating overlapping arcs of energy that would normally shred even high-tier phantoms. Rimuru watches, unshaken. He does not counter aggressively. Instead, he begins analyzing the network of energy flows, identifying the points where her projected force relies on redundancy in the faith grid. Each Shinki and regalia operates as an extension of her will, but they are tethered to human belief. The moment he understands that linkage, he begins subtle adjustments, channeling microwaves of magicules into the ambient spiritual layer, dispersing the concentrated channels without breaking them entirely. The first crack appears in the synchronized volley. One spear wavers mid-flight, deviates slightly. Bishamon notices immediately. Her violet eyes flash with both anger and analytical focus. She cannot allow that deviation to propagate. She issues silent commands, and the formation is corrected. Rimuru tilts his head, noting the reflexive precision. She is extraordinary, a master of battlefield adaptation. But even masters can be optimized. With a simple gesture, he amplifies his controlled interference in the ambient layer. The divine projectiles now drift subtly, not enough to fail outright, but enough to force Shinki microcorrections. Each adjustment consumes Bishamon's resources and mental bandwidth. Small inefficiencies multiply exponentially. Her Shinki notices it and adjusts automatically. But the strain is visible. A veteran war god who has spent decades in precise battles now confronts an entity whose approach does not fit any known paradigm. Yato shifts behind Rimuru, tension coiling like a spring. He knows the stakes. Bishamon does not fight unless she intends to annihilate, and so far she has not stopped. Her attack is disciplined, overwhelming, yet contained. Rimuru does not need to dodge, and does not need to strike back immediately. He only needs to remain consistent, allowing the system to reveal its weaknesses under stress. Each regalia correction, each Shinki micro-adjustment, each subtle tether to human faith that she relies upon. He observes them, catalogs them, and begins neutralizing their cumulative effects. Bishamon's aura flares visibly now, cracks of violet light stretching across her armor as she channels more energy into the formation. She begins issuing layered commands, chaining Shinki's attacks into complex sequences designed to overwhelm him. Rimuru meets each sequence with calm analysis. He is not merely surviving. He is teaching the battlefield a new set of rules. Where Bishamon expects chaos to be punished, he imposes structured order. Where she relies on fear to enforce efficiency, he demonstrates that balance can be achieved without it. The surrounding far shore trembles under the scale of their engagement. Spiritual pressure pulses across multiple city blocks. Humans feel the odd heaviness of tension but remain unaware of the true scale of conflict above them. One Shinki hesitates mid-attack, unsure of whether the projectile is functioning correctly or being subtly manipulated. Bishamon notices instantly and corrects with a thought. Rimuru tilts his head, the faintest smile touching his lips. Precision meets precision. Strength meets analysis. This is a war not fought through destruction, but through understanding. Bishamon steps forward, violet eyes locking on him directly. Enough. The command is absolute, carrying the weight of authority that reverberates through all Shinki and connected faith channels. Rimuru stops advancing, calm, observing. "You are strong," he says softly, almost conversationally, "but strength alone is not enough to sustain order." Her aura flares again, more violently this time, shaking the far shore layer with visible energy waves. "You are testing me. You are defying the rules of this world." Rimuru tilts his head faintly. "I am revealing the limits." That phrase ignites the tension. Bishamon's entire posture stiffens as she realizes the implication. This is not mere resistance. This is structural analysis on a scale that could challenge the very hierarchy she is sworn to uphold. Energy pulses outward from her armor, forming a dense barrier around the park as she prepares for escalation. This is her final warning. Rimuru steps forward again, his aura now subtly radiating outward to intersect with hers. Not aggressively, not destructively, just sovereignly, unshakably present. The tension between them freezes the far shore like glass. Every Shinki, every stray spirit, every minor divine observer feels the weight of that unspoken challenge. Bishamon's hand drops slightly, fingers flexing over her weapons. "You will not leave this district without recognition." Rimuru smiles faintly. Recognition is irrelevant. Stability is not. Yato exhales sharply, gripping his regalia. He knows the war has begun. Not with outright slaughter, not yet, but with the declaration of intent so precise, so inevitable, that the outcome may redefine the rules of divine engagement in this universe forever. Above them, heaven watches, war gods calculating probabilities, and the city below continues unaware that a new paradigm of conflict has just begun to unfold. The first volley of engagement has ended. But the war, Bishamon's war, has only just been declared. Bishamon's presence dominates the far shore, a living assertion of divine authority. Every step she takes, every subtle motion of her armor, resonates through the spiritual layer, forcing nearby minor gods and Shinki to recalibrate instinctively. Her army of regalia forms a protective lattice around her, weapons humming with the energy of bound human faith, each blade, spear, and shard poised to strike instantly at her command. But Rimuru does not flinch. He does not fear the overwhelming display. He simply observes, golden eyes, scanning. Raphael feeding him a constant stream of structural data, identifying patterns in attack vectors, energy densities, and faith flow dependencies. Yato stands behind Rimuru, tense and unsettled. He feels the weight of Bishamon's authority like a physical force pressing down on the district. She is not here for negotiation. She is here to eliminate anomalies. Yet he cannot deny the brilliance of Rimuru's calm. The way he stands, unshaken and methodical, challenges everything Yato thought he knew about power dynamics in this world. Bishamon's aura is pure martial judgment. Rimuru's is pure sovereign control. It is a paradox Yato cannot reconcile. Bishamon lifts a hand, and the far shore vibrates with synchronized pulses of energy. The regalia lattice shimmers, projecting an almost tangible wall of divine force that wraps around the park and adjacent rooftops. Every Shinki aligns in micro-adjustments to maintain the integrity of the formation. She does not attack yet. She waits, testing, analyzing, preparing. Rimuru steps forward slightly, not to attack, but to engage the space between them. His aura radiates outward, subtle but undeniable, intersecting with hers in a delicate balance. Each pulse he releases neutralizes minor volatility in the area, smoothing out spikes of emotional tension that Bishamon's lattice attempts to concentrate. He is not confronting her head-on. He is proving that balance can exist without fear, without domination, without dependence on scarcity of faith. Bishamon's violet eyes narrow. "You presume to instruct a war god on methods of stabilization," she says, voice cutting through the layered energy like a blade. "You do not understand the consequences. You do not respect the hierarchy. You interfere with systems that sustain human and divine life." Rimuru tilts his head, calm and deliberate. "I understand perfectly. I am demonstrating the limits of your system." Her hand snaps downward, and suddenly, dozens of regalia projectiles launch in unison toward multiple sectors of the park, each imbued with layered divine force, calibrated to overwhelm high-tier spiritual defenses. Yato flinches instinctively, recognizing the magnitude of coordinated output. But Rimuru does not dodge. He allows the projectiles to intersect with his protective aura, dispersing the energy into harmless patterns, absorbing kinetic and divine components separately, his control absolute and silent. One by one, the projectiles falter. Deviations appear in their flight paths. Bishamon notices, but correcting them consumes mental bandwidth and energy. Each adjustment is a micro-tug of war against an unknown factor. Rimuru's presence forces recalibration at every turn, and he does it without aggression, without overt dominance. He simply exists, demonstrating efficiency and stability beyond what her faith-based system can anticipate. The pressure intensifies. Bishamon's aura pulses violently, golden and violet light flickering across the spiritual layer. She channels additional regalia, increasing complexity exponentially, creating overlapping waves of force designed to crush, overwhelm, and assert control. Yet Rimuru's methodical intervention continues to unravel the precision. He is not fighting her. He is showing her system's dependency, its reflexive rigidity, its vulnerability under sustained analytical pressure. Yato whispers under his breath, "She's strong, but she doesn't understand him yet." Bishamon's eyes flash with controlled fury. Enough. Her hand rises again, summoning a concentrated storm of energy, this time focused entirely on Rimuru, projecting layered strikes from multiple angles simultaneously. Each one is calibrated to pierce high-tier defenses, exploiting every theoretical flaw a god of her experience can imagine. Rimuru steps forward into the convergence, aura expanding just enough to intersect with the projectiles, not to destroy, not to repel, but to reorganize their flow. Each strike is absorbed and redirected subtly into harmless vectors, dispersing energy while leaving its integrity intact. The battle is not explosive. It is structural, a war of principles rather than brute force. The far shore shudders beneath them. Minor spirits scatter. Shinki hesitates mid-attack, unsure of whether the battlefield is being manipulated or predicted. Even Bishamon feels the strain of recalibration, her experience pressed against an unprecedented counterforce that does not rely on violence. She steps forward, violet eyes blazing. "You will not leave this place without acknowledging my authority." Rimuru tilts his head faintly. Recognition is unnecessary. Stability is. That statement crystallizes the confrontation. Bishamon is here to enforce hierarchy and preserve fear-driven balance. Rimuru is here to demonstrate an alternative, a system where divinity functions without scarcity, without coercion, without dependence on human terror. The first volley of engagement has passed. Neither side has fallen. Neither side has yielded. But the war has been declared in full. Bishamon will escalate, and Rimuru has already begun teaching the rules of engagement that no god in this universe has ever seen. Every Shinki, every observing spirit, and every minor god in the district now understands the truth. Bishamon has declared war on an entity that does not fight like a god. And the city below, blissfully unaware, continues its quiet rhythm while above, the first true battle of a new paradigm quietly unfolds. The first signs are subtle. A ripple across the spiritual layer, barely perceptible to humans but immediate to gods and Shinki alike. The far shore vibrates with an energy that is older, broader, and far more precise than anything Bishamon could project on her own. Above the city, the sky does not darken or split violently. Instead, it shimmers, like an invisible grid snapping into focus, threads of golden light tracing the intricate pathways of faith and divine authority across the district. Heaven is no longer observing. Heaven is acting. Yato senses it before anyone else can. Something is shifting beyond Bishamon's control, beyond the scope of her regalia, beyond even the structural brilliance of her tactical deployment. He feels a pressure that is not merely physical or spiritual. It is conceptual, a weight of judgment and enforcement that stretches across the spiritual and human layers simultaneously. The air seems to vibrate with the collective will of countless upper-tier gods, each one calibrated to uphold systems Rimuru has already begun redefining. Bishamon stiffens, her violet eyes narrowing toward the sky. This is no ordinary escalation. She does not command this power. She can feel it flowing past her defenses and connecting to the district in a way that reshapes the battlefield itself. Her regalia hum louder, trying to anchor her authority against a force she does not control. This is heaven intervening directly, and even she, war god of immense experience, understands the stakes. Rimuru tilts his head, golden eyes scanning the intricate patterns above. Heaven's intervention is deliberate, organized, and unrelenting. It is not a single attack or a single envoy. It is a networked imposition of divine authority, a multi-layered suppression protocol designed to reassert hierarchy and contain the anomaly in real time. Data floods Raphael's systems faster than ever before. Branches of probability, divine calibration, faith flows, emotional nodes. Every metric is being manipulated externally in a complex orchestration meant to subdue him before Bishamon can even act. Yet Rimuru does not panic, he does not retreat. He steps forward into the growing lattice of divine pressure, aura expanding, not violently but sovereignly, interacting with heaven's imposition like a master chess player meeting a board already set against him. He senses each enforcement thread, each subtle manipulation of faith flow, each layered restriction designed to immobilize or neutralize him, and he begins to untangle them. Bishamon watches, tension etched in every line of her body. The upper-tier presence above is powerful, yes, but it is not yet fully realized. Rimuru is not merely resisting, he is analyzing. Every action heaven takes to constrain him is catalogued, measured, and repurposed into real-time calibrations of the district below. Where they attempt to redirect fear and faith to reinforce divine authority, he subtly neutralizes volatility. Where they attempt to force phantoms or residual spiritual pressure into the area to act as a deterrent, he disperses it harmlessly, ensuring that humans feel no residual threat. Yato feels his own breath catch. This is not a fight. This is a war of systems, a conflict between methodology and enforcement, between tradition and innovation. And Rimuru is the anomaly that challenges everything heaven relies upon. The first tangible enforcement arrives in the form of descending avatars, shining with pure golden light, their forms humanoid but layered in spiritual constructs too intricate to be natural. They do not speak, but their presence resonates with absolute authority. One of them lands several blocks from Rimuru, boots pressing into the spiritual layer, causing minor tremors in the ground beneath. Others hover at strategic nodes, effectively forming a perimeter around the park, the district, and even extending into adjacent neighborhoods. Bishamon steps slightly forward, finally finding her voice over the immense pressure. They are reinforcing. The direct intervention confirms her calculations. This is not merely about me. Now, heaven has escalated because of this anomaly. Rimuru turns to face the avatars, his aura folding outward to intersect with theirs, not destructively but steadily. Each one is designed to analyze, suppress, and contain simultaneously. Yet he does not flee. He does not counter aggressively. He aligns subtly, redirecting the enforcement threads, ensuring that the stability of the city and the humans below remains intact even as heaven attempts to impose its will. One of the avatars steps closer, golden eyes piercing, projecting its judgment through both spiritual and emotional layers. The effect is immediate. Minor phantoms materialize, residual anxieties spike, fear pockets expand slightly in human minds. This is how heaven tests, not through brute force alone, but through environmental manipulation designed to provoke instability, forcing the anomaly to reveal its limitations. Rimuru exhales softly, aura pulsing with controlled precision. He begins weaving subtle harmonization patterns into the surrounding spiritual lattice, damping the phantom activity, stabilizing emotional nodes, and recalibrating faith flows in real time. Raphael overlays the intervention, showing the cascading effects. The avatar's adjustments are counteracted just enough to maintain overall equilibrium without damaging the system. Bishamon's eyes widen slightly. She feels it. Even with heaven's direct intervention, the anomaly continues to operate in a controlled, stabilizing manner. Every thread of divine suppression is being countered, cataloged, and optimized. Yato glances at Rimuru, mind racing. You're not just resisting. You're teaching the battlefield itself how to survive without fear, without coercion. Above them, the avatars adjust, combining their enforcement protocols, attempting synchronized containment. A pulse of concentrated divine energy spreads across the district, meant to immobilize him, suppress his aura, and force compliance. Rimuru steps forward again, and the pulse folds around him harmlessly, recalibrated into a stabilizing wave across the surrounding city. Humans feel a faint warmth, almost like a protective presence, without any awareness of the conflict above. Bishamon exhales sharply. This is beyond defiance. This is structural dominance. The avatars pivot simultaneously, recalculating, increasing output, attempting coordinated displacement. Each one strikes in perfect timing, channeling heaven's collective will into a unified offensive pattern. Muru tilts his head faintly, watching the unfolding pattern, noting redundancies, weak links, and energy transfer inefficiencies. With subtle gestures, he begins neutralizing them not by destruction, but by folding their force into harmonization currents, that stabilize the district while keeping the enforcement threads intact. Yato grips his regalia tightly. He cannot comprehend it fully. This is not fighting gods. This is rewriting the rules by which gods operate. The first true escalation of heaven's intervention has begun. And Rimuru is not just surviving it. He is demonstrating that divine authority can be countered without violence, without chaos, and without collapsing the delicate balance of human and spiritual life in the city below. The avatars respond immediately to Rimuru's harmonization. Their attacks shift subtly, adapting to the unexpected feedback in real time. They are designed to be efficient, almost predictive, but now their precision is being undermined by the anomaly itself. Every adjustment they make to counteract his influence is cataloged, analyzed, and repurposed, turning heaven's enforcement into data for optimization rather than destruction. Each movement, each pulse of divine energy becomes a blueprint that Rimuru can exploit without ever violating the boundaries of the humans below. Bishamon steps forward again, her armor flaring, regalia humming with synchronized energy. She is no longer attacking recklessly. Her actions are calculated to complement heaven's enforcement. The Shinki around her tighten formation, ready to interpose and block any vector that might escape the avatar's perimeter. Her voice cuts through the tension, calm but authoritative. You overstep. Even heaven cannot condone the freedom you exercise, submit, or be neutralized. Rimuru tilts his head, golden eyes reflecting the light of the avatars above. Submission is irrelevant. I do not operate within the hierarchy you enforce. I operate outside it. That simple statement causes a ripple among the avatars. They are not designed to interpret ideology, only to enforce compliance. Here is an entity that does not respond to commands, does not adhere to the expectation of fear-based obedience, and yet stabilizes the environment more effectively than the system itself can. Yato's jaw tightens. He has seen anomalies before, but never one that operates on this level. Bishamon's fury is palpable, but she is constrained by heaven's protocols. Her authority is enormous, but she cannot exceed her orders without risking her own standing. She can strike, yes, but she cannot dismantle the enforcement grid, and the anomaly continues to operate unhindered within it. Rimuru steps forward slightly, aura expanding just enough to intersect with the descending avatars. They strike in unison, a volley of focused divine energy designed to bind, suppress, and destabilize simultaneously. Yet the energy wraps around him harmlessly, absorbed and redirected subtly into calibration currents that disperse tension and neutralize volatility across the district. Humans sense a strange calm, unaware that their subconscious stress is being harmonized by the anomaly above. Bishamon's eyes narrow, violet fire burning in their depths. She raises a hand, summoning layered regalia simultaneously, forming not only weapons of assault, but also tethering constructs designed to restrict Rimuru's spatial manipulation. The precision is extraordinary. Each construct is bound to multiple Shinki, multiple points of human faith, multiple overlays of spiritual resonance. Every thread is accounted for, every vector anticipated. Rimuru does not flinch. He studies the lattice, golden eyes scanning every node, every feedback loop, every dependency. Each construct is powerful, yes, but it is rigid. Even the finest divine mechanisms rely on predictable chains, and Rimuru is designed to exploit predictability. With a subtle motion, he releases controlled microwaves of magicules threading between the regalia constructs, neutralizing points of tension without destroying the lattice. The constructs sway and pulse but do not break. Their energy is redirected, their force harmonized. Bishamon notices immediately. Her formation is being destabilized without physical contact, without aggression, without violating a single divine law. One of the avatars steps closer, and a concentrated pulse of authority strikes. It is designed to overwhelm a high-tier divine entity. Rimuru steps slightly into it, and the pulse folds around him, energy dispersed and rechanneled. The humans below experience a brief sensation of warmth and safety, unaware of the cosmic forces at play above them. Yato exhales sharply. This is not a fight. This is a rewriting of the rules. Bishamon's gaze shifts from Rimuru to the avatars and back. The anomaly has turned heaven's enforcement against itself. Each adjustment, each countermeasure, each realignment of energy threads is catalogued by Rimuru to maintain equilibrium and extract insight. The district is more stable than it has been in decades, even under her watch. She tightens her grip on her regalia, eyes blazing. I will not tolerate this defiance. I am the war god of this city. I am the enforcer of heaven's will. You will submit. Rimuru tilts his head slightly. Submission is not required to maintain stability. Cooperation is unnecessary. Observation is sufficient. That statement strikes deeper than any attack could. Bishamon realizes that she is facing not a combatant, but a systemic force capable of demonstrating alternatives to divine enforcement itself. Yato feels it too. Heaven's intervention, with all its precision, is being reshaped, repurposed, neutralized, not through power, but through method. Above them, the avatars adjust, increasing synchronization, attempting coordinated displacement to corner Rimuru. Yet he moves fluidly through the interference, aligning energy, redistributing faith flow, stabilizing emotional nodes in the humans below. Every strike, every adjustment, every intervention is catalogued and neutralized. The anomaly does not retaliate. It harmonizes. Bishamon's eyes widen slightly. Even heaven cannot account for this level of control. Even the collective enforcement of upper-tier gods is failing to impose compliance. The district remains calm. The humans continue their routines. The minor phantoms dissipate harmlessly. The far shore hums with tension, yet stability prevails. Yato's voice is quiet but sharp. You're not just resisting them. You're showing them that their system is flawed. Rimuru's golden eyes sweep the battlefield. Flawed, yes, but solvable. The first full intervention by heaven has ended, but its implications are staggering. Bishamon's war has expanded into a cosmic-scale observation of methodology. The anomaly is not only surviving, it is demonstrating an entirely new paradigm. Heaven has acted. Rimuru has responded. The balance of the Noragami universe has been challenged in a way that no god, no regulation, and no enforcement protocol could anticipate. And the war is far from over. The avatars shift subtly, repositioning themselves across the district in response to Rimuru's harmonization. Each movement is precise, coordinated, and meant to compress the anomaly into a controllable zone. The far shore vibrates under the weight of their combined presence, the air thick with divine authority, each pulse designed to enforce compliance, restrict freedom, and suppress unexpected variables. Bishamon watches closely, her violet eyes scanning every flicker of movement, every adjustment of Rimuru's aura, every micro-alteration in the faith network beneath him. Rimuru does not flinch. He steps forward, his golden eyes calm, his aura folding outward in measured waves that intersect with the avatar's enforcement lattice. Each wave neutralizes stress points in the divine constructs, redistributes concentrated energy, and stabilizes emotional nodes in the humans below. He is not attacking, not resisting aggressively. He is demonstrating control on a level that challenges heaven's assumptions about power and obedience. Yato feels it in his bones. He has fought phantoms that threatened entire districts. He has faced rogue gods and insane curses, but this is different. This is not a fight of strength or skill. This is a war of structure versus sovereignty, methodology versus ideology. Heaven has intervened with the full weight of upper-tier enforcement, yet the anomaly remains calm, composed, and wholly effective. Bishamon takes a deliberate step forward. Her regalia hummed in alignment, forming a defensive grid and layered offensive patterns simultaneously. She projects authority outward like a physical force, pressing on Rimuru not with violence, but with command. "You will submit," she says, voice ringing across the far shore. "You will acknowledge divine hierarchy." Rimuru tilts his head faintly, golden eyes steady. Submission is irrelevant. Stability is not enforced by hierarchy, it is engineered. The avatars respond, recalculating, tightening their perimeter. They coordinate perfectly, attempting to corner him, to compress his influence into a zone they can manage. Waves of spiritual pressure ripple outward, calibrated to suppress the anomaly and test his limits. The far shore trembles subtly, the energy pattern complex and unforgiving. Rimuru steps into the convergence, and each pulse of divine authority folds around him harmlessly. He absorbs, redirects, and harmonizes the flow. Where heaven intended suppression, he achieves stabilization. Where they intended fear, he generated calm. Where they anticipated conflict, he demonstrated control. Humans in the city feel only an inexplicable sense of safety. Minor phantoms dissipate without incident. Bishamon's violet eyes widened in a moment of rare realization. Even with heaven's direct intervention, the anomaly is not only resisting, but improving conditions. Each attack, each adjustment, each enforcement measure is being cataloged and repurposed in real time, demonstrating structural efficiency superior to heaven's own protocols. Yato grips his regalia tightly, awe and tension mingling in his chest. He cannot deny it. Rimuru is not fighting them in a conventional sense. He is rewriting the rules of engagement for gods themselves, showing that authority can be challenged without aggression, without destruction, and without instability. Bishamon tightens her grip on her weapons, aura flaring violently. She cannot allow this defiance to continue. She summons additional regalia, reinforcing her perimeter, layering attacks, creating redundancy in case the anomaly disrupts one vector. Her shinki adjusted in perfect synchronization, every movement precise, efficient, and deadly. Yet the anomaly moves through the lattice effortlessly, neutralizing stress points, smoothing volatility, and maintaining equilibrium. The avatars adjust as well, coordinating with Bishamon, attempting to trap Rimuru, force him into a confined area, and test his capacity to resist collective upper-tier enforcement. Each adjustment is calculated, but Rimuru is always one step ahead, weaving subtle harmonization currents into the field, maintaining stability while countering their influence. Bishamon takes a deep breath, exhaling sharply. She is not just facing an anomaly. She is witnessing a paradigm shift. Her faith-based enforcement, her war-trained precision, even heaven's collective authority, are all being challenged by a single entity operating outside the rules she knows. Rimuru steps forward again, aura intersecting with the enforcement grid, absorbing and redistributing energy without breaking it. Every adjustment, every countermeasure, every attempt to contain him becomes part of the structural demonstration he is conducting. The far shore hums with tension, yet stability prevails. Humans continue their routines, unaware of the cosmic forces at play above them. Yato whispers under his breath, "You're not just surviving them, you're teaching them." Bishamon's eyes flash with controlled fury. She tightens her grip on her regalia, aura flaring, and she channels her full authority into a coordinated strike with the avatars, a volley of divine force designed to impose submission instantly. The far shore quakes. Energy pulses outward in waves, targeting every aspect of Rimuru's influence simultaneously. Rimuru does not retreat. He steps calmly into the volley. Each wave folds around him harmlessly, energy redirected into harmonizing currents that stabilize the district below. Humans feel warmth, safety, and calm. The anomaly has not only resisted heaven's direct intervention, but neutralized it in a way that enhances overall stability. Bishamon's violet eyes widened. Even the combined enforcement of upper-tier gods cannot impose compliance. The war god's fury is palpable. But she realizes the truth. Rimuru is not a conventional opponent. He is a structural force, a sovereign anomaly, and the first entity to demonstrate that divine authority can be challenged and improved without destruction. The avatars hover tensely, adjusting, recalibrating, attempting containment. Rimuru observes, analyzes, harmonizes. Each effort to constrain him is countered methodically, efficiently, and silently. The far shore is tense, charged, but the district remains calm. Humans experience nothing but an unexplainable sense of protection. Bishamon exhales sharply. She has declared war. Heaven has intervened. And yet the anomaly not only endures, it reshapes the battlefield according to principles none of them fully understand. The first full intervention of heaven has ended in practice, but the implications are staggering. Bishamon's war has escalated to a cosmic scale. Rimuru is not merely resisting, he is redefining the parameters of engagement, demonstrating an entirely new paradigm for gods and humans alike. And the Noragami universe will never be the same. The city beneath them continues unaware, ordinary life persisting even as divine forces clash in layers of reality few could even comprehend. Above, the far shore hums with tension, a lattice of spiritual energy stretched taut between the anomaly and the combined authority of heaven and Bishamon's war-ready forces. Every human heartbeat, every pulse of residual faith, every phantom lingering in the shadow of the city becomes a variable in an unfolding system that is about to collapse under its own rigidity. Rimuru observes calmly, golden eyes scanning every node, every enforcement thread, every subtle dependency that Bishamon and heaven have relied upon for centuries. What began as localized defiance has now evolved into a systemic interrogation of authority. Every Shinki adjustment, every regalia correction, every upper-tier avatar movement is cataloged and countered, not through brute force, but through sovereign control, real-time analysis, and precise harmonization. Stability persists, yet it is no longer controlled by fear, hierarchy, or scarcity. It is controlled by understanding. Yato stands slightly behind Rimuru, gripping his regalia, awe and tension interwoven. He has faced chaos incarnate, gods unhinged, and spirits beyond reckoning, but nothing compares to this. He watches Bishamon, observing the war god's mounting frustration as the lattice she has carefully woven begins to falter, not due to direct destruction, but because it is being unraveled from within by an unseen hand that does not break, does not dominate, but simply reorganizes. The first tangible failure appears in Bishamon's formation. Regalia tethered to faith grids begin to flicker as their connections strain under the subtle recalibration Rimuru is implementing. Energy vectors that were once absolute now wobble, ripple, and fail to maintain precise alignment. The avatars of heaven above react, attempting instantaneous correction, but the anomaly has already accounted for feedback delays, cumulative drift, and redundancy loops. Each intervention only exposes additional vulnerabilities, turning the lattice against itself. Bishamon's violet eyes widen in disbelief. Her entire strategy, her war doctrine, the coordinated enforcement of heaven itself, is unraveling without a single direct strike landing against the anomaly. Her Shinki hesitate, unsure whether the failures are tactical miscalculations or a reflection of something fundamentally unaccountable. Every adjustment she commands requires more energy, more mental bandwidth. And yet the anomalies continue to stabilize the environment below, negating the destructive potential of their efforts. Rimuru steps forward through the lattice, golden aura radiating outward. He does not attack. He does not destroy. He simply recalibrates the currents of faith, emotion, and residual spiritual pressure, allowing the system to collapse under the weight of its own overcomplication. Minor phantoms dissipate harmlessly. Humans feel only calm, serenity, and inexplicable safety. Yato exhales sharply. He has seen failure, but this is systemic failure. Not just Bishamon's war, not just heaven's intervention. The rules themselves are breaking. Hierarchies designed over millennia to enforce obedience, fear, and scarcity are being challenged, and the system has no defense against a force that operates outside the paradigm entirely. Bishamon tightens her grip on her regalia, aura flaring violently. She attempts a final synchronization, binding Shinki, regalia, and avatars into a single cohesive strike, a precision attack meant to compress the anomaly and force submission. The far shore trembles with energy, spikes of violet and gold weaving a deadly lattice across multiple city blocks. Every node pulses with the expectation of absolute compliance. Rimuru tilts his head faintly, golden eyes calm. He steps forward into the convergence. Every pulse of divine force folds around him harmlessly, energy redirected into harmonization currents that stabilize the district instead of disrupting it. The lattice wavers, cracks forming where rigidity meets sovereign control. Faith flows reroute, emotional nodes stabilize, and residual phantoms dissipate. Bishamon's multi-layered enforcement collapses incrementally, revealing the structural brittleness inherent in a system reliant on fear, hierarchy, and absolute control. Heaven's avatars respond with simultaneous realignment, attempting to maintain coherence in the collapsing lattice. They increase output, layer enforcement threads, and attempt corrective measures at the sub-second level. Yet each intervention meets Rimuru's sovereign harmonization, neutralizing energy, smoothing flows, and distributing authority evenly across nodes, preventing catastrophic chain reactions. The anomaly does not fight. It corrects. It does not resist. It demonstrates a superior model. Bishamon's violet eyes flash with fury and disbelief. She had trained, strategized, and wielded authority for centuries. Yet she is witnessing the unraveling of her domain and the failure of Heaven's enforcement without a single, direct strike landing against Rimuru. The lattice falters further, hesitate, and the avatars wobble in their patterns, unable to maintain perfect synchronization. Yato feels the weight of the moment. This is the fall of the system, the hierarchy, the fear-based enforcement, the rigid protocols, all bending under the influence of a single entity that operates entirely outside their paradigm. The far shore hums with tension, yet beneath it, stability is maintained. Humans unaware of the collapse occurring above them. Rimuru steps through the lattice again, aura folding outward. Each motion subtly redistributes energy, neutralizes stress points, and maintains equilibrium. Bishamon's final synchronized strike fractures, her regalia faltering, and the avatars above wobble in unison as the enforcement grid loses coherence. The anomaly does not celebrate. It does not gloat. It simply exists, sovereign and absolute, demonstrating that stability, order, and protection do not require hierarchy, fear, or coercion. The collapse of the system is complete in principle, even if some threads remain physically intact. Bishamon's breath catches, violet eyes wide, armor crackling with residual energy. She realizes fully that her war, Heaven's intervention, and even her centuries of authority cannot restore what has been undermined. The system is falling, not destroyed, but rendered obsolete by method, by understanding, by sovereign design. Yato whispers under his breath, awe and fear mixed. You didn't just survive, you ended their rules. Rimuru tilts his head, calm and composed. Not ended, evolved. Above, the avatars pause, their golden forms stabilizing in hesitation. Bishamon's Shinki cluster uncertainly, unsure whether obedience is still meaningful. And the district beneath remains calm, peaceful, and untouched by the invisible collapse unfolding around them. The first stage of the system's fall is complete, yet the ramifications will ripple across the Noragami universe. Every god, every Shinki, every observer in the far shore will now have to confront a reality they never anticipated. Authority can be challenged, hierarchy can be circumvented, and order can exist without fear. The collapse is not just structural, it is philosophical. It is the death of the old rules and the birth of a new paradigm. and Rimuru stands at its center, calm, sovereign, and absolute. The collapse of the system spreads outward like a silent contagion, imperceptible to humans yet catastrophic in the divine framework. Every enforcement thread, every regalia tether, every Shinki adjustment that once maintained perfect alignment is now destabilized. Bishamon's aura pulses violently, attempting to reinforce the lattice, but the subtle recalibrations of Rimuru are impossible to counter with raw force alone. Each attempt to reassert control creates micro-imbalances elsewhere, a cascade of minor failures that multiply rapidly across the far shore. Rimuru steps forward again, golden aura expanding steadily. He does not attack. He does not break. He simply imposes order through method and understanding, allowing the old system to fracture under the weight of its own rigidity. Minor phantoms dissolve harmlessly. Residual spiritual tension in humans dissipates, leaving the city below calm and secure. The anomaly does not fight. It neutralizes. It does not resist. It optimizes. Yato watches, tension coiling like a spring. He has fought chaos, unbound spirits, and insane gods. But nothing has prepared him for this. Bishamon, who has trained for centuries in war and divine enforcement, cannot regain coherence. Her Shinki hesitate, unsure how to respond. Even heaven's avatars are caught in a liminal state, attempting to correct errors only to create more. Their calibration loops unraveling. Bishamon's violet eyes flash with anger and disbelief. She had expected defiance, yes, but not systemic subversion. She had counted on hierarchy, fear, and absolute enforcement to maintain control. Yet the anomaly has proven that none of these are necessary to maintain stability, and the lattice she has built, the perfect coordination of heaven's avatars, cannot survive this revelation intact. Rimuru folds his aura outward, sweeping across the collapsing lattice. Subtle adjustments neutralize energy spikes, harmonize faith flows, and stabilize emotional nodes in the humans below. The far shore quivers under the breakdown, yet the city remains calm. Every collapse of a regalia tether, every wobble in an avatar's stance, every hesitation in a Shinki's action reinforces the same truth. The old system is failing, not because of violence, but because it is fundamentally incompatible with the sovereign order Rimuru embodies. Yato mutters under his breath, "This isn't destruction. This is rewriting the rules." Bishamon takes a step forward, aura flaring, attempting a final synchronization of all available forces. She binds regalia, coordinates Shinki, and channels heaven's avatars into a single cohesive enforcement maneuver designed to compress Rimuru into submission. Waves of spiritual energy ripple outward, pulsating through the district with precision calculated to overwhelm even high-tier defenses. Rimuru steps into the convergence, calm and deliberate. Each wave of energy folds harmlessly around him, redirected into harmonization currents that stabilize the surrounding city. The lattice quivers and fractures under the strain, regalia tethers snapping briefly before reconfiguring in minor, ineffective patterns. The avatars falter, their coordinated sequence interrupted repeatedly by Rimuru's methodical recalibrations. Bishamon's armor crackles violently as violet light arcs across every edge. She cannot understand it. Every attack, every adjustment, every attempt to impose absolute authority is being neutralized and repurposed without overt confrontation. The system is failing around her. Heaven's intervention, the very embodiment of divine order, is being reshaped, redefined, and rendered ineffective in real time. Yato swallows hard, watching Bishamon's fury grow even as her strategies collapse. He realizes the truth. The anomaly is not just resisting, it is demonstrating a superior model of order, one that does not rely on fear, hierarchy, or scarcity. The very foundation of divine authority in this district is being called into question. Rimuru steps forward again, aura expanding, folding subtly into the fracturing lattice. Every intervention from heaven's avatars, every adjustment by Bishamon, every tethered regalia is catalogued, harmonized, and optimized. Minor phantoms dissolve, residual spiritual tension dissipates, and the city remains safe, calm, and unaware of the invisible collapse occurring above them. Bishamon's violet eyes widen. She is facing an unprecedented reality. Her war, heaven's intervention, and centuries of authority cannot restore coherence to the system. Every corrective measure she issues is neutralized. Every synchronization attempt fails, and the lattice fractures further. The far shore vibrates under the systemic failure, yet the humans below feel only peace. The collapse is philosophical as much as structural. The hierarchy is failing. Fear-based enforcement is obsolete. The rules themselves are no longer absolute. Rimuru stands at the center, calm, sovereign, absolute. The system has fallen around him, not through aggression or destruction, but through method, understanding, and the revelation that true order does not require domination. And the Noragami universe will never recover in the same way. Bishamon, Yato, heaven's avatars, and every god who observes this district will have to confront a new truth. Authority can be challenged, hierarchy can be circumvented, and stability can exist without fear. The collapse is complete in principle, yet the implications are only beginning to ripple outward. The fall of the system has begun, and nothing in this universe will remain untouched by it. The fractures in the system spread outward like invisible shockwaves, touching every corner of the far shore and every divine protocol tethered to the district. Regalia wobble mid-air. Shinki hesitate as if questioning their purpose. Heaven's avatars flicker in hesitation, unable to maintain perfect synchronization. Every divine enforcement mechanism is being undone, not by force, but by method. Rimuru moves calmly through the chaos, aura folding outward in subtle waves that stabilize, harmonize, and neutralize the breakdowns before they can cascade into catastrophe. Each adjustment he makes ensures the humans below remain safe, completely unaware of the monumental upheaval occurring above them. Bishamon glares, violet eyes burning with fury and disbelief. She had prepared for defiance, for resistance, for even betrayal. But this is a structural subversion she cannot comprehend. Her years of war experience, her mastery of regalia, her coordination with heaven itself, none of it withstands the anomaly before her. Every move she commands is met with calm precision, every attempt at control rerouted, harmonized, and neutralized. The lattice she has built to assert her dominance is unraveling in real time, and she realizes the impossible. Her authority, no matter how vast, cannot restore the failing system. Yato stands behind Rimuru, tension gripping him tightly. He has fought countless enemies, faced impossible odds, and witnessed chaos that defied reason. But this is different. This is not a battle of strength. It is a battle of systems, of ideology, of principles. And Rimuru is winning not by force, but by demonstrating a superior paradigm. Authority can be questioned. Hierarchy can be circumvented. Fear is no longer necessary for stability. Above them, heaven's avatars hesitate, golden light flickering, their enforcement threads destabilized. The system that was designed to maintain divine order has failed. The anomaly has proven that control can exist without coercion, that structure can persist without hierarchy, that balance does not require fear. Bishamon's war, heaven's intervention, centuries of divine doctrine, they have all been rendered obsolete in principle, folded into a new order defined not by domination, but by sovereign understanding. Rimuru stands at the center, calm and absolute. The far shore trembles, the lattice collapses, yet the city below remains untouched, stable, and serene. Humans continue their daily lives, completely unaware that the foundations of their universe's divine system have been redefined above them. Bishamon's violet eyes glimmer with the bitter recognition of defeat, not in battle, but in principle. Heaven itself has been challenged, and the Noragami universe has been shown that true order can exist beyond fear, hierarchy, and coercion. The fall of the system is complete. Not through destruction, not through annihilation, but through understanding, method, and the quiet assertion of sovereignty. Rimuru has reshaped the rules, and nothing in this universe will ever operate in quite the same way again. And as the golden light of the avatars fades and Bishamon's aura stabilizes in reluctant acknowledgement, Yato exhales, glancing at Rimuru with a mix of awe, fear, and respect. The anomaly has endured. The paradigm has shifted. The Noragami universe will never be the same. Before we wrap up, think about this. What would happen if another anomaly entered this universe, or if one of heaven's upper-tier gods decided to challenge Rimuru next? Drop your theories in the comments because I'm always fascinated by how far you all take these what-if scenarios. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more multiverse confrontations because the chaos has only just begun.